Hey there, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Nate Gustafson, and it's an honor and a privilege to be sharing with you today. If you are anyone in this world with a big heart, a caring soul who finds yourselves with the opportunity to walk along someone's end-of-life journey, whether that's through your faith community, whether that's through your family, whether that's as a hospice volunteer, this project, this program is for you. This is part 2 in a series of training that I've been doing to help people especially provide excellent, enriching end-of-life care for those facing the 11th hour of their life, or the very last hours to days of life here on this earth. And so today we're going to dive a little bit deeper into what it looks like to provide excellent end-of-life care, especially at the 11th hour, and how to build a special team for these special moments. So I want to address specifically, first of all, hospice volunteers. And this, again, are people who have given of their time, their energy, their talents to go through special training to become a person who is skilled at walking alongside someone during their end-of-life journey. And I've been privileged enough the last 13 years, starting my 14th year, to serve in professional and full-time hospice care ministry. I'm also a hospital chaplain. I've been in the church ministry and walked alongside many, many, many people in my family and in the community who have gone through this end-of-life journey because, frankly, we're all on it. We're all on an end-of-life journey. Just sometimes we realize that someone is at the very last moment of that journey, and it takes a special set of skills and care and compassion to really provide that excellent support in that time. And so I want to speak, first of all, to the hospice volunteers and point out that whether you're a volunteer, whether you're a clergy, whether you're a family member who's trying to understand what it looks like to walk with your loved one through this time, there's certain objectives that we can all learn and gain from. And first of all, I want to point out that it's important to understand what this 11th hour stage of life is all about. And next, I want to help you grow in confidence to care for someone who we might say is an actively dying person, or someone, who's in that final hours to days phase of their life. And we want you to be able to be confident as well as do that confident care work with compassion and great skill. And then finally, if you are viewing this, my hope and my prayer is that you will commit to responding to 11th hour needs for your family member, for a patient, for anyone that you find that is in need of this special support, that you would be able to jump in to care effectively and caringly in a way that provides the utmost comfort and support during this very difficult time. So let's review. What is the 11th hour? Well, frankly, it's the time of the clock is ticking, and we're coming down to the final hours to days of a person's life. And this is usually discovered through a number of assessments, a person's level of consciousness, taking a look at their vital signs. We'll discuss how their blood pressure, their breathing, their heart rate, their body temperature, the color of their skin even tell us a lot about how much time they may have left. And yet we also have to admit that none of us have a crystal ball. None of us know exactly when that final breath will come. I'm surprised all the time. I've even been surprised in the last day or two when I've gotten word that someone I knew that was on hospice took their last breath. And I thought, wow, that was surprising and shocking. I wasn't expecting that. I thought they'd be with us a lot longer. So you may hear terms like transitioning or actively dying. Transitioning just means that there's significant changes in this person's physical and cognitive state of being that are pointing out that they may be heading down that final home stretch, to where actively dying, it means that usually the person is comatose or nearly comatose, very, very minimal response to any sort of conversation, to touch, to stimulus in the room, their environment. They completely just seem like they're in a deep, deep, heavy sleep. And there's also a lot of typical staff responses. If you're seeing someone in a medical situation, you'll see a lot more frequent nursing checks. You'll see a lot more frequent attention to breathing patterns, to even you'll see nurses grab a hold of a person's feet to feel the temperature of their feet, to see if the blood circulation is starting to not make its way all the way to a person's extremities, because the body typically, as the actively dying stage takes place, reserves into the heart and into the mind and into the lungs, brings in all their energy. So the hands, the feet, the legs, the ends of our arms often in that actively dying stage, begin to change skin color because we're not really getting the circulation all the way to those extremities. So what's our goal here? Whether you're, again, a hospice volunteer, whether you're a church volunteer, whether you're a family member, ultimately the goal for all of us to respond at the 11th hour of life should be the very same. And that is to be a compassionate presence, to be a companion in the final steps of life's journey. Let me read that for you one more time. I've got it up here on the screen. I really want you to pay attention to this. Be a compassionate companion. Be a compassionate presence in the final steps of life's journey. A compassionate presence, a companion in the final steps of life's journey. So what does it look like to make an 11th hour visit for someone? And if you're not in the situation of having a hospice patient or someone that's your patient in a hospital that you're seeing, substitute in there, family member, friend, neighbor. And so the important part to remember is often it's important for you to have the opportunity to have one last positive encounter with this person, because you never know when your last goodbye is going to take place. You may have 5 or 6 last goodbyes until the last goodbye, or you may not even realize that your last time of seeing someone was going to be the last goodbye. And so it's important to remember that we have an opportunity, whether it's just a routine visit, you've got 20, 30 minutes, an hour that you're planning on spending with this person, or whether you plan on sitting vigil. And by vigil, I mean you're sitting at the bedside, actively tuned into this person, to their needs, to their dying process, and you're planning on being there for 90 minutes or more. Some people think of vigil as being overnight. That's one type of vigil, but sometimes even sitting at the bedside for 2 hours of extended time is an example of a vigil visit. And so during this time, it's so important to not only think about what you want to say, think about what you want to observe, but just to be prepared ahead of time that you're going to see some physical changes. You may also run into extra visitors. You may run into extra family members who are coming off of work, who are spending their last time as well, trying to have their last goodbye. So you want to be very open and honest and respectful of all that is going on, and just be yourself, be natural. There's no substitute for just being you. It puts us more in an uncomfortable state of being, and it puts the people around us in a more uncomfortable state of being if you're trying to be anyone else but yourself. So please, please, please be yourself. It's okay to feel nervous. It's okay to feel a bit hesitant. It's okay to wonder, am I saying the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Just try your best to put all that out of your mind and just be yourself. So if you typically share a laugh with someone, share a laugh with someone. If you typically spend time just in quietness and in silence, be quiet and still. If you typically reminisce about the good old days, then reminisce about the good old days. Let it be natural. If this is a new person or a new patient that you're not familiar with, or you've just been asked to help out and you don't know this, you might be asked to go visit a person's grandmother who's dying in a nursing home and you're not sure what to do with this. What your goal ought to be in that point is, again, just concentrate on you. Concentrate on being a peaceful presence. Concentrate on being that compassionate presence, just that heartfelt, loving, caring person in the room, tuned in to whatever needs may arise. And remember that it's okay if it's only for 30 minutes. It's okay if it's an hour. It's okay if you've got 90 minutes or 2 hours or 5 hours that you're sitting there. Every little bit counts. It's about just being there in that moment, sharing that moment together so that that person in the bed knows that they are not alone. And you want to gather up as much pertinent information, if you're not familiar, about this person as you possibly can. You know, what are the relationships? Are you expected to see other family members there? Come prepared. Try to have a little mindset of, I'm going to pack myself a toolbox. I'm going to have a toolbox or a backpack ready to make this the most effective visit possible. I might have a notepad, something to write with. I might have some music selections I know that might help this person relax and be comfortable. I may have just something for myself to read that's inspirational and uplifting. If I'm sitting there for a long time, don't feel the need or the pressure to fill 90 minutes or 2 hours with a lot of noise. Please don't fill it with a lot of noise, but just every few minutes, maybe every 5 minutes, maybe every 10 minutes, you just say a word or two just to let the person know that you're there with them. Play some music, then stop. Play a little more music. Talk to the person. Let them know what's going on in the world outside. If it's a beautiful day or if it's a foot of snow outside, whatever the case might be, just come prepared with some things that you can do, say, and just be in that space with the person. So how do we make a practical and positive impact on an 11th hour visit? We want to address this again, whether this is for a hospice care provider, whether this is hospital visitation, whether this is a friend's loved one that you're going with them for moral and helping support. You want to be prepared as best as you possibly can. And so I believe in a 3-part preparation. Number 1, prepare yourself. Number 1, prepare yourself. There's no substitute for just being in a good space or being in as good of a space as you possibly can be when going into one of these visits. Secondly, we're going to address how do you prepare to really engage and support this patient or their family member or the person from your church that you're going to visit. And finally, we're going to dive in a little bit more in that toolbox that you can keep prepared and ready for such an occasion. So let's start. 5 key checkpoints prior to your visit. This is kind of a self-checkpoint prior to your visit. So just like this lady on the slide that we're looking at, you want to take a peek in the mirror and you want to examine yourself as deeply as possible. If you have 30 minutes, an hour, maybe you'll have an entire day before you know that you're going to make this visit. Take some intentional time to go through this key checks prior to your visit. First key check, number 1, it's your self-awareness check. You need to it's okay to talk to yourself. Really, it's okay. If anybody gives you a dirty look or looks at you funny, just tell them that Nate said it's okay. So you say to yourself, self, how are we doing today? I would say to myself, Nate, how are we doing today? What's on our mind? Well, I'm thinking about this school activity that's coming up. I'm thinking about our next vacation. Maybe the holidays are around the corner. I might be a little bit nervous about the Broncos doing well this year. I just need to be aware of whatever it is that's on my mind. How am I doing physically, emotionally, spiritually, relationally? And if there's anything in that equation that's just out of balance or needs attention or just needs even a little tune-up, it's okay just to take a couple minutes. If it's a spiritual tune-up, it's okay to take a moment of silent prayer and just confess, I feel in over my head, God, I'm really not sure what to do here. I say that all the time. That's my daily prayer for any type of visit or any type of encounter where I'm just not feeling too sure of myself. That's because I've done a self-awareness check. If I'm physically feeling down or drained, is there anything I can do to boost my energy? Can I, eat something healthy that gives me some positive energy instead of taking up a lot of sugar or caffeine only to crash? The second key checkpoint prior to your visit is an information check. Do I know who the person is? Do I know what they like to be called? Do I know them as Nancy or Mrs. Smith, or do I know them as Bob or Robert? Where do they live? What room are they in? Is anybody going to meet me there? Who do I need to check in with? Who do I need to report to if I have a question or a concern? All those are part of just gathering information, which leads into that third check was, again, logistics. And this was just, trying to prepare yourself. What do I need to know about the location? What do I need to know about what door to go in, where to park, what to say, what not to say? Again, that's all part of information, and logistics are so key to gather together. The fourth check is your plan of care. In a clinical or in a healthcare world, we talk about having a plan of care or a care plan that gives us marching orders. If you're in a church or a family situation, your plan of care might be just as simple as, I'm just going to show up and see what I can see to be of help. That's a great plan. Just show up, see what you can see, and lend a hand or lend an ear or lend a shoulder wherever you can to help. If you're given marching orders, it's good to make sure you have a copy of those marching orders or to write notes down, take notes. So I always encourage people to have a notebook with them on these visits. What are you seeing? What's important to remember? Oh, I need to remember to text Kathy when I'm done to let her know how the visit went, because she's coming after I am to spend another 2 hours with this person. And last but not least, probably the most important, and it kind of ties into the self-awareness check, especially if you identify any just kind of angst or worries or fears or frustrations or disappointments or anything that's just got you distracted from the moment. It's so important to have a moment of just centering. Again, prayer, meditation, thoughtful mindfulness, whatever the case might be, a power nap, whatever the case might be. Literally, you have to take this upon yourself to get prepared and centered and ready to make the best possible impact that you can. And if you're running low on steam, or you're super distracted, or your worries are just through the roof, anything you can do to kind of limit and take care of those things ahead of time will make your time at the 11th hour that much more effective and productive and supportive. So take the time for that centering check before you make your visit, whether it's even in your car, in the parking lot, or outside the person's home. Now let's shift to our second area of preparation, which is preparing for the patient and or their family. We want to take a look at what common patient or patient signs and symptoms that accompany this 11th hour. And if you haven't had it before, I'd highly recommend the book by Barbara Carnes. She's a hospice nurse, has been doing this for 25, 30 years, walking with people through the end-of-life journey, through the 11th hour stages. She's got a terrific little blue book called Gone From My Sight. Gone From My Sight. Not Gone with the Wind, but Gone From My Sight. And in there, she outlines key things to be aware of as this person is nearing the end of their life. Their breathing patterns are going to change. They may have extended periods of not breathing, and you kind of, are they alive? And then they take another deep breath. Okay, so sometimes that apnea or that break in between breaths can last 30 seconds, even up to a minute, believe it or not. Other times they're fish breathing, and it's just rapid in and out, fish breathing. Their conscious level. Sometimes their eyes are going to be out half open, and you think that they might respond to you or wake up if you just touch their arm or you look into their eyes. But that's not the case. They are completely comatose if they're at the very end, and they're not going to be responding to you. But science has proven that there's a level of brain activity and awareness that seems to indicate that they can hear you, that they have some sort of subconscious level of understanding of what's going on around them. So that's why it's so important to pay attention to how you respond in this time, because we don't want to disturb this person. We don't want to do anything that would cause them greater anxiousness or fear or worry. We want to pay attention to the patient's energy level. Again, they may have had a significant rally. I heard of a lady who was nearing the end, and she had this dream, this visualization that the president had come to visit her. And she was just amazed that he would come to visit her in her little apartment, but she was not dressed for the occasion. So she immediately hopped out of bed, put on a nice dress, and went looking for the president. She had not gotten out of bed for 2 weeks. Everyone thought she was near death when she had this moment of visualization or hallucination. And you and I might write that off as, oh, that's just silly. That's just nothing to pay attention to. But that's so critical, because that's part of that energy, part of that rallying, part of that the level of responsiveness coming up just prior to the end can be all over the map. You never know what you're going to see. I don't know if this lady ever found the president, but I'm sure she provided everyone that evening a great deal of heart racing and good laughs afterwards once they had her tucked back into bed and safe and sound. You may also again see skin color changes due to the lack of circulation, and you also might hear this congestion or this kind of rattling in the back of a person's throat. Unfortunately, that's been called the death rattle, and a lot of people have been really got a negative connotation to that. There are certain medications, even little patches of medication, that can be used to minimize the secretions that are coming up as a person's body and their lungs are starting to close down. So those are just common things to be on the lookout for, not to be worried about. But if you do see anything or you are concerned about something, it's good to still ask the question to someone who's in the know. Is this okay? This is what I'm seeing. Is this okay? I'm not sure if this person's really comfortable or not. Can you come take a look at this? Or what do you think? Get a second opinion. It's so important in that moment, especially if you're a family or a caregiver in that situation. You definitely want to always ask for someone else's opinion, someone who's just a step further in their knowledge to help you out. And you may also see family and caregiver responses. I've seen all sorts of family and caregiver responses, let me tell you. I showed up at a person's house who I thought they were having a family reunion, not getting ready for grandma to die. They had uncles and cousins and aunts and children and grandchildren and neighbors all out in the backyard, the front yard. Oh, the food smells were phenomenal. Oh, to be in that house and to be just sensing all of this love and joy of just family and celebration of a life well lived. And by the time I weaved through the maze and got into the inner sanctuary of the house to sit next to Grandma, it was just such an honor to be there with 2 or 3 loved ones who were holding vigil with her and hold their hands and be there in that time with them. It was just such a beautiful picture, but it could be a bit intimidating at first if you show up thinking you're there to be of support and they're offering you sandwiches and hot dogs and hamburgers and green chili and burritos and everything under the sun, just depending on the family and what their favorite menu items are. You never know what you might get. And I've also been with families right after their loved one dies where they're arguing. 2 sisters literally were arguing over their dead mother's body about when she took her last breath. Now, talk about family dysfunction. That's a whole nother topic. You may see hovering or smothering family members. You may see distant or removed family members. You may see a lot of really tired and weary people who are just ready for all of this to end. And it's not uncommon also to see a lot of busy bees. It's not uncommon to see a lot of people hovering and just running around and around and around. So whatever you see, you want to next shift into having a toolbox ready for just about any occasion. You're not going to cover every occasion, but just about any occasion. Focusing on number 1, again, your self-care items. Do you have the food, water, medications, jacket, pencil, pen, notebook, contact information? Part of that, also the information items, is also part of good self-care, so you're not stressing yourself and worrying later on. Having a plan, having a schedule. Okay, I'm going to show up at 11. I'm going to stay till 1. At 12, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to take at least 10 minutes to walk, to get some fresh air, to use the restroom if I need to get some fresh water. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to sit with this person. It's okay to take breaks. It's okay to care for yourself in this time and this season, especially if you feel like you're a family member and need to be there the whole time, or you've been visiting this person for months and months and months and months, and you're just so close and so important for you to be there. It's really okay to take a break. It's really okay to step away for a minute. You also want to think about kind of an 11th hour comfort kit. Having music ideas or having a music player, whether that's your phone or a CD player. Having maybe some spiritual writings or some uplifting writings that are very positive and hopeful. Again, I mentioned Barbara Carnes earlier. Her Gone From My Sight book is blue. She also has a book all about the 11th hour, which is pink. I would have that in every 11th hour visit that you make. Whatever your role might be, you may only make one 11th hour visit a year. Have that ready to go when you need it. Have some lavender lotion for yourself, maybe for the person that you're with. That's calming. The scent is very calming. Having some tissues is very important. Having some hand sanitizer. Having some nature sounds or pictures, that's another really helpful piece of comfort care tools to have with you. Also having some great questions just to ask family members, talk to even the caregiver staff. What was it like when you first met Maria? What was she like when she was a kid? What was she like as a mom? What are your favorite memories as a friend of hers from 30 years ago? All those are good questions. Life review just means that you're opening up the opportunity for someone to talk favorably, to reflect upon the meaning of this person that you're with. So again, making meaningful 11th hour visits. So you arrive, you read the room, you're taking a look and seeing, okay, where's the patient, who's with them, what's been going on, just getting an internal sense of everyone's well-being, everyone's kind of energy level, figuring out who are the key players that I need to connect with in this room, going to them, introducing yourself, explaining the reason that you're there if they don't know already. And again, turn down the noise in terms of the useless noise. If you hear kind of useless chatter, if you hear there's a disgruntled couple of people over in this side of the room, it's okay just to calmly and politely ask them to turn that down, to take it to another room, because you want to lead with the best, and the best tool is just to create a warm and loving and caring environment around this person, because again, they can hear, they can sense, they can tell when people are upset, they can tell when people are frustrated, they can tell when things are in a positive energy state, because you can really see someone's breathing and their just whole body relax. And that's what we want for them. Again, you may sit at bedside, you may sit across the room, you may go back and forth from bedside to across the room. You just want to try to figure it out, what seems to be the best physical spot, what seems to be the best emotional response, spiritual response, and just bring it all together and lead with your best tools, and then note the responses. Does this person appear more comfortable after 15 minutes of playing music that I was told that they would like? Does this person nod their head or breathe easier after reading this uplifting poem or this bit of scripture that I was told that would be really meaningful for them? Ultimately, you just have to go with the flow. Do the very best you can to be present, to be tuned in, to be responsive to whatever needs that you find. But ultimately, don't forget, probably our best tool in the toolbox isn't a tool at all. It's to refrain from using a tool. It's to be silent and to be still. Even just a pause like that before saying another word, it's such a great tool to have in your toolbox, such a great practice to build into these 11th hour visits. Now, before we wrap things up, I do want to give a word of warning. In 14 years plus, 13 years plus of doing this, I've stepped on my fair share of landmines in the journey that were buried, or I just wasn't aware that I was going to step on them. And oftentimes they have to do with overstepping boundaries or not being aware of certain dynamics that are at play around me. So I just want to touch base on boundaries and dynamics. So 11th hour volunteer. Now again, I'm assuming that you are a volunteer, whether that's from your hospice or a church or a nursing home, or you're volunteering to help support a friend or a loved one. Remember, you are not the nurse or the doctor. You are not their savior. You might be a minister, but you're not their savior. Remember, it's not your job to be the boss or the expert of anyone else in the room. You may know more. You may be more experienced. You may see exactly what the problem's going on when you read the room. But use discretion. Use just a little bit of correction, but a lot of grace in these moments. You are not this person's family or best friend, unless you are. We'll just leave it at that. You are not their only hope. The hope hopefully comes from many sources: family, friends, faith, love, peace, joy, all those things. You are not also there to be the comedian, to brighten up moods and tell people to stop crying. It's okay if there's tears, because tears allow the opportunity for laughter to come in. I've seen so many folks just start laughing because something was funny that they remembered, and then they stop, thinking that they did something wrong, that they shouldn't be funny in that moment. And I encourage them, I'm like, just be yourself. It goes back to the very beginning. Don't try to be the comedian. Don't lighten up the mood just because you're uncomfortable with the mood. But if something comes out that's just naturally funny, let it be funny. It's okay to share a laugh. Remember that this is who you are for this person. You are their companion and communicator. You are their advocate. You are a team player. You are a part of a team of care providers, whether that's a team of 2 or a team of 22 care providers that are there to advocate, support, encourage, nurture, nourish, again, this person and their situation. You are there to be their comforter and their ally, to be with them, to love on them, to open up your heart to them, open up your heart to what they might be trying to still teach you in these final steps of the journey. So you're there also to be the listener and the learner. Understanding dynamics. Dynamics could take place in so many different areas. That's kind of all outside of this this image on your screen. So there's dynamics that come with learning, what someone knows, what someone doesn't know, their knowledge that's accumulated from their learning. There's dynamics about some people use their certain competencies or their certain skill sets. They use those to kind of usurp over someone else's involvement. Just have to be aware of these, folks. It can derail a positive environment in a hurry. You have to be aware of the level and the differences of training. That's a different dynamic. If someone has very little experience or training in these final hours, then it's okay to encourage them just to be with you, just to take a side role, that they don't need to come in and be the savior in this moment. They just need to be themselves. They just need to be open-hearted and willing to experience this and see what it is like. Because experience will help us then navigate and see these dynamics when they begin to flesh themselves out. Again, the 2 daughters that were going at odds with each other over their mother's dead body about when she took her last breath. That poor mother had to live in her final moments with the hearing and realizing that her daughters were not okay with each other. I've also heard of family members who show up at the bedside of a dying loved one who haven't talked to each other for 20 years. And yet the person who's dying has this sense, this innate sense, this sixth sense that something isn't right. And so they aren't comfortable. They're not willing to let go for their final passage until they realize that my family's going to be okay. So we have to exercise our ability to kind of navigate and surf through these dynamics that are at work. And it takes growth, it takes time, it takes skills, it takes opportunities to go through this. By no means after 13 years do I have all this figured out, but I'm starting to tune in and clue in on these dynamic issues, whether it's family dynamics, whether it's staff dynamics, whether it's relationship dynamics, whatever the case might be. We can learn from this. We can use our experience as an advantage to help us gain the ability to navigate and grow from this experience. So again, you're going to find that family dynamics are going through the best of times and the worst of times. And you'll see the supportive, loving, caring families. You'll also see the family feud families, the deathbed arguments. You'll also have people trying to triangle each other. Well, if I disagree with Susie, I'm going to go to Barbara and say, well, don't you disagree with Susie? Why don't you and I come and gang up on Susie together? And that's a triangle. And it's also common for families to have a scapegoat, someone that they just blame for everything. For those of you that are with me as a part of our 11th hour program, or you're in a hospice that has an 11th hour program, or you're in a church that wants to be there for these final steps of the journey, I want to encourage you to enrich people's lives in a very special way, and that's by being a part of a dedicated team. In my view, any person or any group of people can make an 11th hour visit. If you know this person or you don't know this person, it's possible to go with a loved one whose mother-in-law is dying, and you may have only met the mother-in-law like 10 Christmases ago. It's okay. You can do this. You can go be with your loved one as they say goodbye to grandma, and you can do this in a way that's helpful and supportive. It doesn't take a lot. We've gone over a lot of scenarios, but ultimately if you lead with a caring heart and a listening spirit and a humility, that goes a long way. If you do have the opportunity to be a part of a dedicated team, who responds to special 11th hour needs, all the better. How amazing it is to have people that are willing to take those calls for your community, whether it's someone in your neighborhood, whether it's someone in the nursing home down the street, or someone 20 miles away that you might have the opportunity to go and be with in their final moments, their final hours. For us as a part of our team to be a part of a dedicated team, again, it takes time. You need to have experience as a volunteer. You need to go through extra training and be willing to communicate extra to the team about what's going on. It doesn't mean you have to wait 6 months until you make an 11th hour visit if someone you know is nearing the end. It just means to really be a part of a team that might respond to some more difficult scenarios. I recommend having at least kind of 6 months of build-up in terms of making some general visits to folks in need, in especially healthcare crisis and settings, but then especially someone who may have had a person or two that's passed on, that's died since they began to volunteer in this way before going on to be a dedicated 11th hour volunteer. Ultimately, the goal that we're all aiming for, whatever your context is, whether that's to help your grandmother have a peaceful passing, whether that's to care for the people in your congregation, whether that's to support the neighborhood because you know that you've got some elders in your neighborhood that aren't doing so well and their time might be coming quick. The ultimate goal that we're all reaching for, just like these kids, whether you're kind of standing there or whether you're actively getting ready to kick, the goal is to enrich lives. And there's no way to do this except to do it with an open and caring and loving heart, checking yourself, checking your motives, checking your intentions, and gathering it all together to get out there and aim for that goal, to be a compassionate presence, a companion on the end of life's journey. That's when we know we've hit the ball into the net, when we can go be with someone, whether it's for 20 minutes or 2 hours or over the course of 3 days, and just know that we're constantly tuned in to their need for someone to be there with them, encouraging them, loving on this person, not knowing when they might take their last breath. So for me, we have a team process. Again, I don't need to go over this in great detail, but I hope that you, if this finds you in a place where you want this to be your outreach, you want this to be a part of your life's mission, I hope that you will gather a team together, at least one more person that will help you enrich lives during this 11th hour time and process. In the comment section of this video, you're going to see a link to the first 11th hour training. You're also going to see a link to receive more hope training, more hopeful training to get out there and enrich lives, to make a difference when it really matters. And I hope you'll subscribe to these resources, and I hope that they find you well and enrich you in your journey to help other people, especially those who are facing the 11th hour of their life. If you have questions or concerns, please reach out to me. I look forward to hearing from you again soon. Thank you again for being a part of this journey towards the end of life and being that 11th hour superstar who enriches a person's life at the very end.